So my name is Girish Shankar. I head the AIF business at CAMS, and over the next 30 to 40 minutes, I will walk you through the role which an RTA plays in structuring and managing an AIF. I am joined here with my colleague Ravi Raghuvaman. Between us, we should be able to also handle most of the questions which you may have, specifically with regards to the role which an RTA does. I would request that any questions you may have, if you can post it on the chat window, we can pick it up and then answer that sequentially. While for the first 30 minutes or so, I will walk you through the presentation which we have. Quickly, the way I've structured this presentation, I'll briefly touch upon first for the first half of the presentation. I will briefly touch upon how the AIF industry is structured, what are the various the regulatory landscape, and what an RTA does specifically in terms of supporting the AIFs in this industry. And then I will also touch upon what CAMS does as a part of our role in this industry. So without much further ado, quickly moving on. So yeah. So, like I said, quickly on the AIF landscape. So today, like all of us are aware, the commitments as of March 2022 is around 6.4 lakh crores, which is roughly 6.4 trillion. And we have around 892 registered AIFs, largely Cat 2 and Cat 3 and a few on the Cat 1 side. So what has driven this growth? Like all of us are aware, superior returns profile, the structuring options which are available as an AIF, the lack of the fact that some of the other asset classes like hard real estate and gold has lost its attractiveness. And of course, there's a lot of regulatory enabling regulatory framework like the GIFT City Accredited Investor Framework, which has really led to this, let me say, explosion of growth in the AIF. And if you go by most of the industry reports, we expect the industry to grow on a CAGR basis of at least 25% over the next 5 years, which is good news for all of us. But what it has also meant is that with increasing growth, there has also been a increasing regulatory oversight on compliance requirements, which has come to AIFs. So if you look at the graph on the right, you'll see that as years go by, except for that blip during COVID phase, the number of regulations which has come governing or which the AIFs have to comply with has increased significantly, and it is expected to increase, which will come with any industry as it become more retailized. We have been a part of some conversations with SEBI in various meetings, etc. While SEBI has been very clear, saying that their intent is not to over manage the situation, make it very high in terms of oversight. They would still want some, they will be high on disclosures, high on transparency, at least from a reporting perspective, to ensure that the investors are given a fair deal. And hence, we have seen also that a larger set of regulations which are coming cover the liability side of operations. So when I say the liability side of operations, a lot to do with how your investors are dealt with, complaints monitoring, the accredited investor framework, how you deal with investors in a GIFT City regime, more on the KYC, PMLA regulations around how you will govern the KYC of your investors, what will you check, what will you not check, how are you reporting your overseas investors. RBI has also sought some sort of reporting for the NRI investors. We saw the stamp duty coming in around 2 years now. Right? In 2020, there was the stamp duty, which they said you have to start collecting. And of course, multiple amendments to what we report and what we say, what we monitor in terms of your liability side operations. And this is only expected to go increase going ahead as the industry becomes more retailized. So what we have seen also over the years is that, so if I take an AIF, right, I mean, the fund administration piece of the business has become increasingly outsourced. So if we attempt to just bucket what a fund does in terms of their core activities, of course, you have the core activity of fundraise, investments, and designing of product, which the fund does in itself, which the fund manager has to do, which is his core responsibility, core activity. There is also the associated activities of fund administration, and we have seen the industry largely starting to outsource. I mean, maybe I would say the outsourcing pace has picked up in the last 2 or 3 years as the number of regulations governing it and the scale also started building up. We have seen funds who initially started with 1 or 2 institutional investors looking at support externally for managing their fund administration activities as they launch their second fund with slightly more retailized kind of an investor base and going forward. And the industry is now largely looking to outsource that entire piece on the operations and fund administration side. So when you say fund outsourcing, what is it that they are looking to outsource? The industry is looking to outsource. Starting from sales and marketing, which is actually the pre-launch, we see a lot of clients, a lot of funds reaching out to the market. Of course, you will talk to the trustees and to the legal vendors, etc., to pre-launch your fund to finalize your PPM and other aspects. But also being ready to start onboarding your investors. There are a set of activities which you have to do in terms of making sure you have your registrations in place with the various KRAs and CKYCs, etc. Having a mode of acceptance for all your investors, a mode of communication for all your investors. You will have some sort of support which you will need in terms of finalizing your collaterals, etc., which is what the industry is now increasingly looking at, taking the assistance of some of the established players in the market to give them support in that. Of course, on the core operations piece, which is your onboarding of investors, your processing, record keeping, the KYC angle of the investors, etc. And I will cover this in more detail in the subsequent slide. That is, this entire piece is something which is common and has become a lot more increasingly more relevant now, given the higher set of regulations which are coming from SEBI, that this has to be handled well outside and properly. The entire piece on how you interact with your investors, with your channel partners, distributors, etc., who may be beginning in your will be assisting with your fundraise. I mean, what are the kind of services you want to give it to them? Because yeah, I mean, they're a critical piece for your subsequent funds also, right? I mean, their experience with your first fund would kind of define how their continued involvement with you as an investor / distributor for subsequent funds also. And we are now increasingly seeing a lot of distributors asking for a lot more standardized, lot more MIS heavy kind of a request which come from the AIF, so that they can handle their investors better. Fund accounting, while not technically in our TA scope, is also something which is getting outsourced, both on the investment as well as the investor level. When I say investor level, largely for Cat 1, Cat 2 fund, because you have a pass-through accounting, there is allocations and waterfalls, etc., which happen at an investor level. That is also something which is now getting outsourced, and there are accounting firms in the market, fund accounting firms, which support you with that, and of course with your bookkeeping, your Ind AS financials, and as well as your audit support, which were statutory auditors. Compliance and risk management increasingly becoming very more important nowadays. Starting with the stamp duty, the regulatory reports, which is either monthly or quarterly, what you have to do yearly in terms of FATCA reporting, your PMLA services to ensure that there are no you are anti-money laundering, you are compliant with anti-money laundering regulations, etc., is also stuff which the fund managers are now looking to outsource so that they stay compliant. I would say, based on our experience, that some of these were possibly not given the importance that it needed maybe a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. But now SEBI has increasingly started becoming a lot more stringent when they do the fund audits to ensure these are complied with. For simple things like PPM has to be acknowledged by the investors the PPM page has to be acknowledged. I mean, these were slightly, I would say, not very, while it is still a part of the regulations, it's become a lot more heavy on compliance for these angles. I'm just taking an off example, and I'm sure there are a lot more such examples where we see SEBI coming back and asking KRA, CKYC, etc. So hence, the industry is now moving towards taking the help of specialist agents who can support them with these activities, so that the fund managers can focus on the core activities of fundraise, structuring, and deployment. I will spend more time specifically on what an RTA does. Now, RTA, while that technically the term is a registrar and transfer agent, what we see the RTA role is largely on the liability side operations, like I call it, which is your investor servicing and investor onboarding and servicing through the life cycle of an investor, right from the day he comes as an investor to the fund till the day he or she exits the fund as an investor, through whichever modes it is. And we have been doing this for some time. So let me just tell you what an RTA typically does as a part of fund servicing. It starts from, like I said, prior to you launching a fund, you will need to get your SEBI registrations in place. You will need to get your credentials up and running with various agencies like the KRAs and the CKYC, which is required so that when an investor comes in, you complete the regulatory requirements in terms of KYC, KRA, etc. The RTA, the established RTAs, they will have proper systems to ensure that they have all these data which you collect from the investors captured appropriately in the system with adequate controls. This is very important in our mind because your funds generally are if it's Cat 1, Cat 2 funds, it goes up to 10, 15 years, Cat 3 funds are 3, 4 years or 5 years, right? And the investor stays through the tenure of the fund. So you need to be sure that the data is appropriately reflected and adequately managed through the tenure of the fund. So it's important, whichever RTA you choose has the adequate systems to capture all the details in the form and manner it has to be captured, including your clauses for your various investment levels, for your the commitments and the management fees depending on the different class levels, etc. So all those things have to be adequately captured so that tomorrow, if there is an audit or a requirement, you can refer to the documents and ensure that you have treated the investor fairly as per your PPM. Extended, once you do that, the onboarding, earlier it used to be largely physical, but now we have over the last 2 years or so, we have seen the digital onboarding also pick up, and RTAs should be able to support you both modes of onboarding, whether it be physical or digital, and help you with capturing the details, like I mentioned the previous point, support you with all the validations. Validations will be twofold. One will, of course, be your regulatory requirements in terms of commitment, number of investors, minimum commitment, relationships and stuff, joint holder relationships and stuff, and of course business rules, which would be what you would have in terms of your management fee structures, cost structures, and other rules which you will have. So they will kind of support you with that piece. We generally, as at least a practice which we do, is we kind of try and get the forms first, and we encourage AIFs to ensure that the forms are in good order in the first time itself. So which means that we don't kind of reject forms, and we try and make sure that all discrepancies are called out and cleared, so that when you go back to the investor, you go back with a clean form. Similarly, post you have your once you have accepted the investor, then you get into the initial onboarding activities, which is accepting his initial investment, which whether it be in physical or digital mode, the money, whether it be check, RTGS, or any of those, ensuring that they are compliant with third-party validation kind of requirements. SEBI's as a rule, SEBI insists that every fund has to ensure that the money which is being invested in an AIF, PMS, or even for a mutual fund or anything, it comes from the investor's account. So there are validations you will have to do to ensure that independently the money is coming in from the investor's own account, either in his or her own name or the joint account holder's name. So that is a reconciliation piece, and of course, ensuring that your money which has come into the fund matches with whatever you have. Associated with it, your fees and unit allotment. That's important to ensure that you allot units for the investor, so that going forward, that is his proof of ownership in the pooled investment vehicle, which is the fund. Multiple ways of allotting units. You can either do it on the commitment or on a partially paid basis, or you can do it on the contribution, which is again the how part of it. But I'm not getting into the how part of it unless there's a specific question around it. But otherwise, RTAs will ensure that units are allotted to the onboarded investors, and with the initial investment, a statement of account is or statement of holding is also initiated, is shared, which kind of becomes the proof of ownership and the proof of this thing for the investor. The support which RTAs extend then goes on towards the subsequent modes, which is if you're a Cat 1 or a Cat 2 or even some close-ended Cat 3 funds, you will have a drawdown structure where you will call upon the commitment amount on multiple tranches where the RTAs support you. Heavy on MIS, ensuring that all the details are captured and supporting you for your MIS for your internal purpose, as well as what you will have to submit to SEBI / your distributors, channel partners, etc. Once you get the investor in, then there are a set of activities which come during the life cycle of the fund. If you have a distributor-led strategy, there is this entire piece on commission calculation of what we call brokerage, which again falls under multiple modes of either upfront or a trail brokerage structure. Especially for Cat 3 funds, you will have a trail brokerage structure. A distribution and redemption. So distribution, if it's a Cat 1, Cat 2 close-ended fund, or a redemption, investors during the life cycle of the funds will have updates which they will share with you, either in terms of updating their current contact details, change of address. Some investors do transfers if they are not able to off-market transfers, like we call it, wherein they will transfer their investments from investor A to investor B. And the entire life cycle around it, right? I mean, there is also cases where investors may come for a top-up. There will be defaulters who do not pay the subsequent drawdowns. Then you will have to handle those exceptions. You will have investors who will come for a reduction in commitment, saying that I'm not able to. I had committed 5 crores, but now I'm not able to meet the 5 crores. Reduce it for 2 crores. So the entire piece. And if that is the case, then how do you handle the entire piece of the upfront commission which you have paid for the distributor, the trail competition? So there's some work which goes in and around all these things, which typically in a proper RTA scope, the RTA should be able to take it over and handle the entire piece based on their experience in the industry. And then comes the entire piece on customer service. So once you have the investor onboarded, then periodic communications to the investor, handling their queries, SOA request in and around clarifications in the fund, which could sometimes also come on the fund performance angle. Periodic communications in terms of your fund fact sheets, your drawdown reminders, etc. Logistical support in terms of sending them whatever we send, right? In terms of welcome kits, periodic communications on your yearly income statements, if it is a Cat 1 or Cat 2 fund. So that entire piece is something which an RTA will take up in the part of the scope. So if I had to just summarize what I said in the last 2 slides, RTAs, the entire investor onboarding piece, getting them all the details, making sure their forms are good in order, supporting you with the initial allotment and activities in and around that, and during the life cycle of the fund, whatever the investor needs, whatever your channel partners, distributors need, that entire piece is handled as a part of the RTA scope. Just a couple of things, and I've put it as a separate slide because what comes as a part of your regulatory reporting and as a part of your MIS reporting is a significant activity in itself, right? Starting from the stamp duty collection and remittance, which has to be done in the month of allotting units, whether it be initial allotment or a subsequent drawdown, or if it be a transfer or a transfer case. Then you have the entire piece on regulatory reporting for the quarterly basis for a Cat 1, Cat 2, or a monthly basis for a Cat 3 fund, which you will need a lot of data in terms of what is the money which has come into the fund, what is the money which has been returned from the fund, and a lot of this is actually on the not on an AUM basis, but it is on the cost basis. When I say cost basis, is the actual fund flow into the fund and outside the fund. You will need MIS so that you can track of who is coming in, which you will also need to kind of share with the distributors, both during the initial phase of the fund as well as the subsequent phase of the fund. And then there's a bunch of MIS and around it, which we typically give as a part of our offering to our clients. Of course, I mean, and depending on what they want, also as a part of customized. There is also the piece which kind of integrates with the custody or the fund accountant, because your fund accountant will work only on the capital which has come into the fund and which has gone out of the fund. They really don't get into the details of which investor, etc. So that entire piece of unit capital, letting the fund accountant know what is the money which has come in as a part of the weekly closing or the monthly closing or a daily closing for that matter, and what is the money which has flown out, etc., is something which the RTA will handle with the fund accountant. So that is more from a liaising with the regulator / your other partners, which could be your distributors or your fund accountant and your custodian. What some RTAs do also is give you the additional benefit of technology platforms. And when I say technology platforms, as the fund scales up, as you become larger, we have seen a lot of importance being given to the self-service mode, right? I mean, so they want all the minimum, the hygiene factors. Let me put it like this. So KYC and PMLA, there are two options, right? I mean, RTs can either do it for you or you can outsource it to somebody else. But generally, what we see is this entire scope comes bundled with the RTA scope, so that it is tightly coupled to the unit allotment or onboarding of an investor. So this entire piece of registering the investor with a KYC or a KRA, as well as ensuring that they're compliant with the PMLA anti-money laundering regulations, that it's not a SEBI debarred investor, that he's not a investor from a sanctioned country, he's not an investor, he or she is not an investor from a NSE debarred list or any of those sorts, right? I mean, those kind of validations has to be done. A good RTA will have those databases available with them and be able to give you those validations either internally or through one of the market tools which are available like WorldCheck. We and some of the RTAs also give you portals / technology platforms for you to monitor it. That's what I call as a CRM, which is for you to monitor whatever or to track what is happening within the various investors within your fund across other schemes of your fund, as well as give a portal for your investors / distributors for coming in and viewing their portfolio with you as a fund. There are some activities which a few fund managers also do, especially when it is a distributor-led strategy, where they kind of do an outbound calling on recorded lines to ensure there is no mis-selling which has happened with the investors, both on the PMS and AIF side. We have seen this picking up because now that SEBI has started tracking investor complaints also, it is important that the investors understand the fee structures, the minimum commitment requirements, the fact that they have to pay during drawdowns. If they don't pay during drawdowns, that there is a penalty which is applicable and stuff around that. So especially on distributor-led strategies, we have seen some of the funds opting to do that, and we feel that's something which these are all moving parts, right? I mean, you need to be sure that that activity has happened, that the PMLA check has happened, and your regulatory checks are in place before you actually accept the money from the investor into the fund. So some of the RTAs, like we, kind of build that as a part of the service offering, so that from a fund's perspective, from a fund manager's perspective, that entire piece is outsourced and it's given to the RTA. So this was more on what the role of an RTA is for a fund. I will also take the next 5 to 10 minutes to briefly talk about what CAMS does, and I will try not to repeat. So what do we do? So first, CAMS, we are Computer Age Management Services. We are a listed entity. And we are a large player in the financial infrastructure providing space, technology infrastructure play. We have 70%, 69% of the mutual fund business with us, and we have a significant presence also on the AIF side. We do have other lines of businesses also, which is into insurance repository, into our account aggregator, which is the new flavor which is emerging in the market. We have a CRA business, which is the NPS business, and we also have a payment services business, which is CAMS Pay. We also have a small fintech as a subsidiary, which is Fintuple, which takes care of most of the UI UX kind of requirements for many of our clients. We are regulated, heavily regulated to that matter. We are regulated by SEBI, we are regulated by RBI, and now by PFRDA, by virtue of the fact that we kind of service all these three industries. We are a part of IAIF, which is the Industry Association for AIFs. We are a part, and on the technology side, we are ISO compliant on quality, on information security, and business continuity management. And we are also SOC 1, SOC 2 compliant. I said large on the mutual fund side, we have around 69, roughly 70% of the AUM today is serviced through CAMS, which is roughly 26 trillion, 26 lakh crores. Specifically on the AIF side, because that's more relevant to this audience, we have been with the AIF industry since 2007. It was not AIF, then it was PEVC funds. So we actually started servicing for the PEVC industry in 2007. Our first client was Milestone. Ved Prakash Arya and team. They possibly were the first to kind of look at a retailized structure to rather PNVC funds at that point of time. And the market has only grown after that. While we started initially only with investor servicing, gradually over the time, we have enhanced our scope, service scope to include investor servicing, fund accounting, digital properties, which is our value-added services, KYC, KRA, PMLA regulations, etc. Today, we service around 125 plus fund managers, and between them around 295 schemes. The AUM or assets under service is around 1.45 lakh crores, which is 1.4 trillion is what I mentioned over here, and across more than a lakh folios. We also have a presence in GIFT City, where we do have a license to operate out of GIFT City. We have a few clients who have already launched their AIFs and are using our services in GIFT City. And we have a platform called CAMS WealthServ, which has seen some good traction, which is a completely digital onboarding platform for AIFs and PMS. Our clients, which is what I have said, we have a good mix of Cat 1, Cat 2, and Cat 3 clients. Largely kind of reflects how the industry is. It's representative of the industry that we have a larger portion of Cat 2 clients than Cat 3 and a few of Cat 1. We also have some of the earlier clients who continue to be in the PEVC and have opted not to take an AIF registration. But that's kind of a rundown book in that sense. So that was 11% earlier, now it's come to 5%, but that's what it is. We have grown with the industry. We have built our capabilities on the industry. Our platform can support all the nuances I spoke about when I spoke about the RTA in terms of commitment, contributions, your class structures, etc. CAMS WealthServ is an example of what we have built ahead of the industry. We launched the digital onboarding platform. For the first 6 months, we hardly had any clients, but I think once COVID effect, not COVID effect, we have suddenly seen an explosion of interest for a digital onboarding solution from our clients, as well as new clients, new entrants in the market. So we always believe in co-investing with our clients and building the infrastructure so that the industry can grow. I'm not Yeah, so I'm not spending too much time on what I covered in detail on the core RTA services. So we do everything we mentioned earlier in the slides, which is the pre-launch support, everything on the RTA services, everything on the investor services. We also offer fund accounting solutions, both at a fund level as well as at an investor level, which is your Form 64C, 64D, and stuff around that, which is your allocation and distribution at an investor level. So we also support that. We support entirely on the compliance and risk management, stamp duty, regulatory reports, etc. And we also have digital portals for your investors and your distributors to kind of do log in and check whatever they need to check. And we do that both for AIFs and PMS. I'll just spend a minute on CAMS WealthServ. That is our digital onboarding platform. It is widely used now. We have around more than 30 installations now, wherein our clients use it for onboarding their investors. It's completely paperless flow, currently live with individuals and going live with non-individuals also. So we can use the platform for both individuals, NRIs, and non-individuals. And of course, we'll be happy to walk you through that on a one-on-one session at a later point of time on how that platform can meet your requirements. It's an integrated e-signing and e-stamping feature. Like I said, completely paperless. For the one-off investor who kind of doesn't prefer doing a digital sign either based on Aadhaar or a DSC, we do have an omni-channel phase wherein the form can be downloaded and submitted in any of our front offices. So we also have a large front office infrastructure. The traditional or the earlier clients continue to use our front office infrastructure for submitting the AIF forms pan-India. So we have around 200 locations pan-India. So technically, if you have an investor in Guwahati, can submit his form in Guwahati and get to know whether it is good in order while it is in Guwahati, rather than waiting for the form to come all the way to the central location, which is either Chennai, Bombay, or Delhi, depending on where the fund is. And so that's the kind of structure which we have. I'll just spend a minute on increasingly, like I said, there's a lot more emphasis on cyber security qualities and controls. Fortunately for us, by virtue of the fact that we also have a large MF operations, we kind of have been able to leverage that and extend those benefits to all our AIF clients. So your data is secure, it is replicated real time, there is data security, there is ISO compliance, there is SOC compliance. Our applications are 99.5% availability. We have never had an outage in terms of application outage for any of our clients. We also have a central risk monitoring team, which kind of ensures that that all our services for our clients are adequately monitored, and that we do not have any errors which creep in, which includes the PMLA services also. We are, like I said, quality 9001 2015 certified, and of course we have concurrent audit kind of a framework which we have in place to ensure that that our delivery is at par with the industry. Why do we think we are different? Like I said, we have built our service scope over multiple layers, starting with core RTA services, and now gradually we have extended to fund accounting, value-added services, PMLA services, pre-launch support. Now we are a technology partner, knowledge partner, and we have actually reached a stage where we are actually we've been able to have that audience with various bodies. We did play some part in the accredited investor framework, wherein we made presentation to the APAC as well as to the ministry on how that framework can be implemented and can be leveraged to give the benefit to the investors, of course, with ample support with the industry bodies also. So I think we have reached a stage where we are a knowledge partner to the industry. We have a 200+ team in terms of the AIF dedicated team strength. Some of my colleagues over here have grown with the industry, so they started. So when we created this team, we had pulled out people from some of the other operations, but now we have gradually recruited people from the market with industry knowledge. And today, I think we are, what our clients always tell us is, you have know-how. I mean, your people know how the industry is and what the industry requires and what the regulators require. And that, I think, is something which we are proud about. And that's come with the fact that since 2007, we have been with the industry. We have seen how it has grown and how it has managed, especially on the value-added services, like how do you do accounting, how do you do how do you onboard certain set of investors, how do you ensure that what we give to the investors matches his respect. I think we bring value over there. I spoke about 200 plus staff. We constantly train them, keep them abreast with whatever the recent regulations are, and the regulations have also changed. Right? The accredited investors, the GIFT City, everything calls for a different set of compliance requirements. So that's something we have something proprietary in Learn called as WealthServ, which we kind of use to make sure our staff are abreast with it. Yeah, and pre-launch support, which we said in best practices, designing your collaterals, omni-channel readiness for your sales and distribution, etc., something which CAMS has. And we have been able to demonstrate this over the period of the last 15 years. I'm conscious of time, so because I want some time for Q&A. So I will pause here and I will open it up for any specific questions that the team may have. So I just look at the chat. We can see the screen. आप हिंदी में समझा सकते हैं. बहुत लेट आपने बोला मेरे को. Sorry, I didn't see this earlier. Yeah. So we are Chennai based, but I can converse in Hindi, Chami. So I'll be happy to give you more detail. Or if you can just offline message us your details, I will get my colleagues to speak to you and explain whatever we walked you through in this presentation. जो भी हमने यहाँ बोला था वो आपको Alex हम समझा देंगे हिंदी में. Agree, will appreciate a copy of the PPT. I will check with Aditya on that. Yes, kindly share the recording of this presentation. Yes, the session is being recorded. Can you please give a sense what kind of annual expense, let's say $20 million AUM Cat 3 AIF will have to do to RTAs? So 20 million, how many crores? 1 million is so that's okay. 140 crore, right? Yeah, 140 crore, 100 investors. I think in terms of BIPs, it will be around 1.5 BIPs, lesser than that, in fact, right? 1 point. No, it will be more actually because you will have a minimum. Yeah, we'll discuss. I think, but I think around it will be 30,000-40,000 rupees per month. I think, you know, around 30,000-40,000 rupees per month is what I think it will be there. Let's see. Any other questions? Kindly type. I don't know if. Does PMS also have to get an RTA? Technically, no. Technically, no. But we have clients who use the infrastructure to support with the investor onboarding. Yeah. So especially if you have a largely retail PMS, then you will. I won't call it as an RTA service per se. There, it is more from support from handling the retail base of your investors. So generally, funds which are more than 100, up to 100 investors, I think they kind of manage in-house. But more than 100, they look at some sort of a support for onboarding the investors. Do I have a minimum AUM requirement? No, I don't have it. I mean, apart from the regulatory requirement of 20 crores, I don't think we have. So we also have funds who have less than 100 crore AUM with us. We have very small funds as well as very large funds. Very small funds typically are new fund managers kind of a fund. or a very niche strategy fund. We also have an ESG fund, so they're all very niche. We have 1 or 2 funds which do only accredited investors. So those are very, very small funds with 4 or 5 investors with less than 100 crore AUM. So we do the entire spectrum of services. Yeah, and that's a conversation we can have. Yeah, thanks, Abhishek. So PMS, yeah, we can have WealthServ, which is the digital onboarding platform. So yeah, thanks, Abhishek, for pointing it out. So what we have seen now is smaller funds who have less than, let's say, 50, 100 funds are using the WealthServ platform for onboarding investors directly for their PMS. And as you become more and more retailish, then you can look at outsourcing the larger scope of investor handling, query handling, etc. But maybe because the costs are high if you outsource for PMS, that's what I thought. If it is a large institutional managed account only, not an AIF, what would be the cost be? Is it fixed or variable? We have a fixed fee structure also. Yeah. No, but are you able to? Yeah, I mean, to the extent of K1 requirements, etc., we do, but we don't have a presence in US per se. So we don't handle this. But if you have US-based investors and there is K1 requirements, FATCA requirements, etc., that we are taking care. K1, yeah. I will let Aditya handle that. I mean, it's something handled as a part of a physical session in Delhi. Possibly Aditya can come back on that later. But we'll be happy to support. Yeah. I can agree. If our client asks to set up an AIF, can we do? Can you set up an AIF? Yes, you can. I don't know Mahesh Kumar. But yes, I mean, there are certain compliance requirements which the SEBI stipulates, including the credentials of the investment manager. They have come with some regulations around who can be an investment manager and kind of experience they should have in the industry. So if you qualify for that, as well as the minimum sponsor commitment kind of criteria, I think you can set an AIF. I'm assuming you're asking, can I set an AIF for my client? Yeah. And we'll be happy to support, at least from a compliance perspective, on what all you need to get in place before that. And we can put in touch. While we don't do taxation, etc., we can put in touch with partners who can help you with that. We work with some trustees and partners for that here. There are set of regulations for GIFT City fund managers. It is not the same as your and actually the RIA regulations do not apply for AIF fund managers also. Right? RIA regulations do not apply for AIF fund managers also. That's my understanding. The AIF fund manager regulations are different in itself. RIA is largely for the mutual funds. But yes, there are set of regulations, guidances, which has been stipulated for GIFT City fund manager, including the fact that they need to have an office in GIFT City with a minimum area, minimum staff strength, etc. Yeah. Yeah. So, where can we find this regulation details for GIFT City? It is available. It's a very good site. You should go to the GIFT City site. They have all the details available in terms of regulations, and of course, from IAF also. So we do have a we are an implementation partner. We don't do much on the CAMS doesn't do much on the regulation side of GIFT City. So you may want to reach out to a Deloitte or a PwC or I don't know who else is a partner with IWAF for setting up the fund. But post setup, we will be able to handle the entire investor servicing piece as well as the fund accounting piece in GIFT City. And the regulations are very much available on the GIFT City side. It's Gujarat in GIFT. So it's a very set of regulations. Offline also we can share. There is some overlap with. Okay, just before that there was. Can you throw some light on stamp duty implications on AIF Cat 2 transactions? So stamp duty is applicable both at the time of allotment as well as at the time of a transfer. It is 0.005% if it is an allotment. The industry follows two practices. One is if you have a paid up capital kind of a concept, then the industry pays stamp duty on the commitment. So if an investor has come with an initial commitment of 1 crore, but he's only making an initial contribution of 10 lakhs, one set of the industry say that we allot units for the commitment, and because you're allotting units, even though it's partially paid units, because you're allotting units for the commitment and the stamp duty stipulates based on allotment of units, they pay the 0.05% for the 1 crore. The industry which use based on fully paid of units, wherein they allot units only for the 10 lakhs, which is initial contribution, pay stamp duty of 0.005% at the initial contribution, drawdowns, so on and so forth. So that is the two modes which is available. But whichever mode you follow, you have to pay 0.005%. If there is an off-market transfer wherein the commitment is transferred from investor A to investor B, there is a 0.015% stamp duty incur, which again has to be paid by the seller. But it should be paid to the seller, right? To the state of the seller on the consideration amount. So maybe not the amount which is transferred on the books of the fund, but on the consideration amount. Yeah, so that is one piece also which has to be taken care. Can you throw light? There is some overlap between a custodian and an RTA. Can a custodian do all the work of an RTA? This is basis of similarity of your today's PPT and last PPT by Edelweiss. So can an AIF Cat 3 be done only with one of them or not both? Yeah, there is an overlap. Everybody does everything. So we also do fund accounting. They also do fund accounting. I would urge you to go by the credentials as well as what value you see from both the parties. So we do compete with them in a few, whether it be Edelweiss, whether it be KFIN, whether it be anybody. I mean, yeah. But I think our value comes more from the fact that we are focused on RTA, and a lot of funds give custody to somebody else, but gives the RTA piece. So yeah, so we have places where, but yeah, I mean, I leave that for a different discussion. Which regulations? IFSCA regulations. There are different set of regulations for GIFT City. Yes, it is called IFSCA regulations. It is not the standard SEBI regulations for an AIF. It is a separate, even the regulating entity, I think there is a unified approval mechanism over there, which is different from the other regulation mechanism over here. Can we have recorded version? I will let Aditya answer that. Can anyone contact us over phone and tell us more about the services? I have, if that screen is still visible, I have shared my colleague Abhishek Gupta's number and an email ID. If you can drop a one-on-one message to Abhishek or to that email ID, we'll be happy to get back to you and explain more in detail in Hindi, in English, in Tamil. Thank you. That is very helpful. Contact details is there on the screen. I will call it out once again. Abhishek Gupta, mobile number is 9930074369. He is my senior colleague who is based out of Bombay. Who kind of handles everything sales for us. 9930074369. We also have an email ID AIF_NGR, short for manager, @camsonline.com. What if AIF is a trust and stamp duty on contribution agreement? Yes, stamp duty is on the contribution agreement. Trust LLP doesn't matter. If you are allotting units to the investor, you have to pay stamp duty. 0.005% if it is a initial contribution or a drawdown, 0.015% if it is transfer. Yeah, sorry. Just I'm calling it out. There is another stamp duty which you pay on the contribution agreement, which is your e-stamping, which is either, I don't know, 500 or 300, depending on which state you are. That is different from this. That is your stamp paper, stamp act. This stamp duty is for allotment of units. Both are different. So essentially, you will have to pay that 500 or 300 plus the 0.005% on the amount. Thank you, Ms. Sharif. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Abhishek. So we are at the top of the hour. I'll wait for a couple of more minutes. If anybody has any questions, please type it in the chat window. I'll be happy to take it. Otherwise, we'll wind up. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. I'll just end the session. And, thank you for your time.